We'll get started. Welcome to cultivating mushrooms for fun and profit, or frustration and futility. I'm not sure which. One thing's for sure, it's not a get-rich-quick scheme. um, yeah, we're just a small operation. We sell at local farmers markets. So we sell at the Hayward markets on Monday. We sell at the Park Falls market on Wednesday, and we sell at the Ladysmith market on Saturday. Obviously, we're not there today, but and sometimes, we don't always make all three markets every week. As I'll talk about, mushrooms have a mind of their own. They kind of fruit in cycles, and so sometimes we're in a low cycle, and we don't have any product to take to the market. We did a little over 500 pounds of mushrooms last year, and to kind of give you some perspective as to how much that is, if you take the old-fashioned standard refrigerator size, not those new ones now, those monsters, but the old ones, the standard size, they'll hold about 20 pounds of mushrooms. So 500 pounds of mushrooms, you can kind of, that's a lot of refrigerators full. This year we're about 300 pounds right now. We're a little bit ahead of where we were last year, even though the weather's been horrible this year for growing mushrooms. Probably because we have more logs than we had last year. But the best months for growing mushrooms are yet to come. It's the August, September, October months are the best. We get a lot of fruiting during those 3 months. At the end of October, though, we're done. So it doesn't matter whether the mushrooms are done or not. We're done. Then it gets tougher to sell them in the off season because there's no markets going on then. So it's very, very difficult to market them. Most of the people that buy our mushrooms, I would say, are not necessarily locals. They're people from the Twin Cities. They're our biggest buyers, and of course they're not coming that time of year.
They're
not
good
here
for something anyway, Gary.
What's that?
They're good for something anyway.
Well, yeah, that's good. Yeah. In fact, I'd like to tell a story. When we first started thinking about doing this, I wasn't sure what the market would be, and so my wife worked at the hospital in Ladysmith, and as part of their outreach, they worked with the farmers market in Ladysmith, and so she got to know several of the growers that would come to that market. And there were a couple of farmers that had these CSA programs, and that's where you basically buy a box for the season, and every week you get a box with stuff in it. And one of those growers was really interested in getting some shiitake mushrooms in his box. And so, and I was interested in finding a market, so we kind of worked together, and I got enough mushrooms for him to put in the box, and I delivered them to him. He put them in the box and delivered them, and the next thing he knew, his phone was ringing off the hook. What the hell is this in my CSA box? I can't stand mushrooms. So that was kind of the end of that. We kind of figured that Russ County might not be our market. And so from there I went up to Hayward, thinking that maybe the Twin Cities market would be a little bit better, and there's a lot of Twin Cities people that come over there, and sure enough it was. And so we developed quite a market up there. We're now going back to Ladysmith and actually having fairly good success down there. So go figure. I don't know. There are some people down in Russ County that like mushrooms. We found that out. Anyway, what I thought I'd talk about today is what we do. The whole inoculation process, the fruiting process, the whole 9 yards here, and it all starts in February. And when there's still snow on the ground, I'm out there with my chainsaw, and I'm cutting the trees that I'm going to be inoculating. Now the best trees for growing mushrooms are those that are nice and straight, clear bowl, no pock marks or anything on it. They're growing fast. In other words, it's the best trees in your forest, right? But we don't want to high grade our forest, okay? That's not what we're here for. So what I do is I rarely find a tree that I can't find at least one section of log that I can use for mushrooms, and the rest of it goes into the firewood pile. So what I do is, I do thinning from below. I take out the junk, and I get my mushroom logs that way. And so that starts in February, and then once I get them cut, and after the Berkey, I don't want to wear myself out. I got to ski the Berkey first.
What species you didn't mention?
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. Species. Well, I'll talk about that in just a little bit. But right after in March, after the Berkey, then I start skidding them out. Okay, and again, we don't have any big equipment to go on there, and of course that time of year, the ground's getting soft anyway. And so I skid them by hand. I have a logging winch, and so as long as there's snow on the ground, because I want to keep them as clean as possible. If it starts getting muddy, I don't skid them that way. But I do have that logging winch. I'll skid with that. I've got that logging arch up there you saw. I'll skid with that. And then God gave me 2 of these shoulders. I'll cut them to length and I'll walk them out. And so I did 298 logs this spring, inoculated 298 logs. And so it's a fair amount of work to get them out. Species. Yeah, good thing you mentioned that. For shiitake, we use hardwoods. So you can use oak, hard maple, which is what we use a lot of because we have a lot of hard maple. You can also use ironwood. That grows shiitakes really well, and so we use ironwood as well. Mostly here we use hard maple because that's most of what we have. We have a lot of hard maple. For your oyster mushrooms, we use the soft hardwoods, so like aspen and basswood. And the literature says that aspen is the best for oysters, but I've had much better success with basswood than I've had with aspen. And I have a lot of basswood, so I use mostly basswood for my oysters. And they produce for a long time. You take a look at that rack of logs there, that there's hardly anything left of them. In fact, if you can pick them up, they're light as a feather. They're still producing mushrooms, believe it or not.
Is there a market for these woods?
I mean, when they're done?
No. Well, either way, either before they're done or at any point, are the mushroom people always have a source, or is there a market?
Oh, for selling the logs? Yeah, there is a market. In fact, I buy my spawn from Field and Forest, and if you have stuff that would work, they always have growers that are contacting them, asking them if they know anybody that they can buy logs from. So you can contact these folks and say, I've got logs that I can sell for shiitake logs, etc. And they'll get your name out. Mm-hmm.
Probably going to mention it, but how long would one last? Many years or 1 year at a time?
Yeah, well, for shiitake logs, basically you're looking at about a year per inch in diameter. So if you have a 4-inch diameter log, they'll produce for about 4 years. Now they'll actually produce longer than that. These logs here are the ones that I started with that are in this area, and then I've expanded off this direction, that direction, up that direction. These logs are still producing, but I no longer force them. They don't produce enough for me to spend any time with them. But I still watch them because they still produce mushrooms, and so I pick them when they produce them. But I don't go out of my way to work with them anymore. And then eventually they go into our garden, where they supplement the soil in our garden. So, yeah.
Gary, what are the ideal dimensions of the logs? I assume you're carrying them up by hand, so you don't want them too big.
Yeah. Well, this
and
is
our ironwoods are not that big. We have a lot of them, so
now
that size.
This is kind of the ideal dimension. That's why I brought this one down here. This is about perfect. It's nice and straight. It's it's not too heavy. You can pick it up and you can throw it on your shoulder. without any problem. Carry it around. And that's something you learn over time. If you take a look at that rack of logs way over there, that was one of my first ones. And they're
Yeah.
I would dread having to come down and work with those logs because they're just too heavy.
Yeah.
And you don't want to throw out your back. You don't want to, stumble when you're carrying something. Twist your ankle, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you learn to avoid that. Now, what I found is that logs this size produce mushrooms really fine, but if you have a log that's this big and you cut it this short, it'll produce mushrooms just fine too. So you can keep the size down, the weight down to what you can handle, and still produce mushrooms just fine.
Most of our ironwood is not that big a diameter. I don't think it's use them when they're that size or not.
Yes, you can. What I found with the smaller ironwoods is they rot really fast.
Okay.
So you'll get maybe 2 years out of that, and that's it. It'll be done. Yep. But you can use it. Yep. Of course, it takes less spawn with a smaller log, so
Okay.
right. So then the next in the process, once I skid them out, I take them up to the house there because that's where we have power. And as you see, I need a current bush in order to inoculate them. So my current bush is up there. And then I inoculate them, and then I bring them back down here, and they go into the woods where they incubate, and they'll incubate for a year down here. And so what I do is I put runners on the ground in a shady part of the woods, and I just lay them on those runners, and then I cover them with this black road fabric, and that helps hold the moisture there, and it holds the heat, the humidity, and it provides a perfect environment for them to incubate. And then if everything goes according to plan, the mycelium will grow throughout that log, and you'll be able to tell because the ends will be white. And that's the mycelium coming out of the ends of the logs. And then you've done a good job, and those logs will produce for you. If you get to the end of the first season and you don't see any white on the end of the log, it was a bust.
Yeah.
Right. So then, when we're inoculating, first thing I got to do is I got to get some spawn, because I don't grow the spawn, I buy the spawn, and I buy it from Field and Forest. Give them a little plug here. I know Joe and Mary. They've been involved with WOA too over the years, and they run a business up at Peshtigo where they sell spawn. And there's two different kinds of spawn you can buy. So if you're just going to be doing a few logs, not many, you can get by with the plug spawn. Basically, it's a dowel that they've grown the mycelium in, and then you just take a regular drill with a regular drill bit, I forget the size, and you drill the holes, and the holes would be 6 inches apart, okay, on the log, and then you turn it 1/4 of an inch, and to 2 inches, not 1/4 of an inch, 2 inches, and then you offset 6 inches apart, okay? So it's like a diamond pattern, and you do that throughout the log, and then you take those dowels, and they're all cut, the right size and everything, and you just take a hammer and you tap them into those holes, and then you wax it. We talk about wax, and then you're done. If you're doing a lot of logs, though, it's a lot more expensive to buy the dowels, and it's really slow because a regular drill doesn't have high RPMs. Okay, so you're going to be forever and a day drilling holes. We did 298 logs this spring, or I did 200. My wife didn't help me. 298 logs this spring. So I buy sawdust spawn, and I buy it in the 5-pound bags. So it's a block about like this, and I inoculate the logs with that sawdust spawn. And then what I do then is I use an angle grinder. Okay, so this is $35, so it's not going to set anybody back too far. You can buy an adapter, and I got the price for that here someplace. Yeah, the adapter is $40. A specialized drill bit, which you could also use this in a regular drill, but again, you're not going to have the RPMs. Let's see, the bit is $17. And so again, I plug this into the current bush, and it goes, you know, zip, 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 zip. And so you do that, you know, turn it 2 inches, offset the holes all the way around the log. So then you got it. Then you got a log with a bunch of holes in it. And so then I take that sawdust spawn, and I have to loosen it up because it's like a brick. Okay, it comes like a brick. And so I loosen it up, and I put it in a regular dish pan like this, because those bags sometimes tend to break, and so I don't want to lose the spawn. Then I use this inoculating tool, and this thing runs $43. Okay, it's just a simple tool. It's got a hollow part here with a plunger in it, and there's at the end here it's open like a thimble. Okay, and so you jab it into that bag 4, 5, 6 times till that end gets full of spawn. Then you put it over the hole, and you hit it with your palm, and you see that plunger comes out, pushes that spawn into the hole. So you're going beep, 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 beep. 10 to 12 hours a day. That's why I stand on the inside here. I don't stand on the outside, because if I stand on the outside, I got to lean forward just slightly. And after you do that for 4 hours, your back is killing you. So I prefer standing on the inside, right where I can stand erect, and that's much easier on the back.
You get the tool from the same company?
Same company, yep. That, you know, this is, you can request this catalog, or you can go online and just download it, and it's got a tremendous amount of information in here. You know, if you're thinking about growing mushrooms, for instance, it's got a mushroom suitability chart. So you know, you want to grow on logs. Well, you can grow chestnut, chicken of the woods, comb-toothed lion's mane, maitake, namako, olive oysterling, oyster, reishi, shiitake, turkey tail on logs. You want to grow on straw, you can grow oyster and winecap on straw. Okay, and it's all on this chart. And it also has a tree species suitability chart. So you have a certain type of species on your property, and say, well, what can I grow on that species of wood? And so you just look in this chart, and it'll tell you what is the preferred species for growing that mushroom. It'll tell you what's a satisfactory species for growing on that, and then one that might work, might not work. Okay, so it kind of gives you that, and you can play with it.
So the spawn, does it need the sap of the tree? Is that what it needs, or what is it using out of the log?
Okay, well, mushrooms are decomposers, and so what they're doing is they are basically eating the wood in that log.
Oh, the wood itself.
The wood itself.
Okay.
Yep, the lignin in the log. Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And so that's what it doesn't need the sap. In
Oh.
fact, that's why I cut in February. You don't want the sap. They have to be dormant. They also have they have that chart in here, when to cut. And so you see during the winter months, going into spring before bud out is the best time. The worst time, spring and summer. Worst time.
You can't use old wood. That's
No, you can't use old wood. It's got to be fresh, but not too fresh. Okay? You have a narrow window to use these logs. So you cut them right away. If you inoculate, you're probably not going to have a success. And the reason being is that trees contain chemicals, self-defense chemicals, to protect themselves from fungi. And so you inject fungi into a freshly cut tree, you're going to kill the fungi. Okay, so you have to let it rest for a couple weeks and let that chemical dissipate before you start inoculating.
You
But
cut in February, but then you don't inoculate.
I don't start until March, about March 15th. There's another reason for that too, and I'll explain that. But then you don't want the log to dry out. Okay, so you got a narrow window. So, you know, like I say, I cut the end of February, skid the first part of March. I start inoculating in the middle of March. I'm done inoculating by the middle of May.
So they're exposed to the outdoors the
Yep.
entire time.
Yep. Well, I'll tarp them. You know, try to keep the sun off of them, et cetera, but they still dry out. So you got about 4 weeks, and then it starts getting questionable again. So, yeah, but another reason I start in the middle of March is because I do everything outside. And one thing I've noticed is that you know, we wax and I'll talk about that process. We wax the inoculation site. In fact, I'll just talk about that quick here. I buy this wax, and I'll cut it with a hot knife, old hunting knife that I found out along the side of the road. I heat it up with a torch and just cut it, and then I bought a pan for 50 cents at a garage sale. And, you know, this is a high bar to get into this business, right? And then I got these, you know, everybody uses, you know, can of SpaghettiOs or whatever, you know, and I dab wax on those inoculation points. And there's a dabber here that you can buy from Field and Forest, like this. And I bought 2 of them. I used one. I hate them. I don't like them. What I use, you can buy these cheap paintbrushes for 99 cents, and this works just great. You know, you hold the can, hot wax, so you got to have gloves on. Hold it and dab it on there to cover up that mycelium. And the reason you want to wax it is, well, there's 2 reasons. Number one, you want to keep the mycelium moist, because if it dries out, it'll die. So you got to keep it moist. The second reason is because slugs love mycelium, and so if you put them out in the woods and you haven't got those covered, mycelium is going to be gone real quick. Okay. And I also
Did you say bugs or slugs?
slugs.
Slugs. You don't.
Slugs, yep. And then I also wax the ends. There's a question whether that's necessary or not, but it helps keep the moisture in the log, and that's what mycelium needs for that. Okay. But yeah, getting back, okay, the waxing. I found that if the temperature isn't at least 37 degrees, the wax will not stick to the log. And I even put mineral oil in to help make it stick better, makes it a little bit more pliable. But at 37 degrees, below that, it will not stick. It also will not stick if the log is wet or got ice on it, something like that. And you know, I've pushed the envelope a couple times, and I've ended up having to go back and re-wax, and that is no fun. So that's why, you know, so I'm watching the temperature real close that time of year. You know, sometimes I can get, you know, a couple hours in, sometimes I can't. Sometimes if I can get 12 hours in, I'll put 12 hours in to get these done, because I've got that short window to get it done in. There's a second reason why this perfect log did not get inoculated this spring. Anybody have any guesses as to why I didn't inoculate this log?
Run out of time.
Ran out of time?
Already got
No,
the
I.
lichen on?
What's that?
Already got the lichen on?
Nope. No, the lichen doesn't bother anything. What I do is basically before I you know, I brush off much of that stuff and any dirt, because basically this drill bit, you know, you don't want drill bits and dirt don't mix.
Yeah.
And if you keep your logs fairly clean, you can get 2 seasons. I can get like 600 logs out of one drill bit, and that's not. I mean, that's pretty cheap. Yeah, but if you have a bunch of dirt on them, they're not going to last near that long. Well, if you look at the end of this log, what do you see on the end of that log?
Crack.
Crack? Well, that's because it's dry. But we already know this is too dry to do. But yeah, there's something else on the end of this log. Anybody else see what's on the end of this log?
I might use my glasses so you can see it.
Okay. Oh, it's not the tiny little spot.
Dry on the outside?
Well, it's too dry because
Yeah,
it's
been
been
out
too
long.
long. It's all heartwood. There's very little sapwood in this log.
Oh, okay.
And fungi will eat the heartwood, but not very efficiently. So if I would have inoculated this log, it wouldn't produce squat. The shiitake like sapwood, and so this log was rejected because of that. Hmm.
How did you find that out?
Well, after I had it up there, and I looked at it. Oh, this is a perfect log. I threw it on here. The next thing I do is I look at the end. No, I'm not going to do it.
But coming to the realization that sapwood is what you're looking for, was that a trial and error realization? Or?
Pretty much. Yep. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so that's something to watch for, and again, when you're doing if you're not taking the best tree out of the forest, which I hope you're not, to grow your logs, or grow your mushrooms, I mean, you're not going to know sometimes till you cut into the tree, what you're going to see. And I've seen some pretty poor trees, that are in the understory. They don't look like they're growing fast at all, but they have one or two perfect shiitake logs in it, further up in the tree. We're very, very little heartwood. And so yes, a lot of times you just don't know till you cut the tree down. Take a look. Yeah.
So what's your ideal log? Like heartwood, maybe 50% or less?
Yeah, I'd like a little bit more sapwood than 50% if I can get it. Sometimes towards the end of your inoculating season, you still have some spawn left, and you've picked through your log pile 3 times, and now you have to start making some compromises. But yeah, I always go with those with the most sapwood. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Here, I have a question for you, or a forester like Matt. Why does that have so much heartwood?
Oh, I'm guessing it was just a super slow growing tree. It's been suppressed for a long period of time. Even though, it looks fairly decent from the outside. Mm-hmm. But that would be my guess. Mm-hmm.
Like a competition?
Yep.
Too much
Yeah,
competition?
yeah, being suppressed by competition. Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You had used the term mycelium and spawn. What's the difference?
Oh, okay. Well, the spawn is the medium that carries the mycelium.
And the mycelium
Is the mushroom itself.
that's
Yep.
the main part.
That's the mushroom itself. Yep.
Okay.
And it's a white. Basically, it sends out these strands. It's a strandy type of a thing, and that's the actual mushroom. The mushrooms that we eat are the fruiting structures of that. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. So then, so I buy my spawn from them. Let's see. For shiitakes, there's a bunch of different varieties, and I grow a bunch of different varieties because different varieties grow best in different conditions, and you never know what kind of conditions you're going to have growing them outside. So they have cold weather shiitakes, they have warm weather shiitakes, and then they have what they call wide range shiitakes. Now your cold weather shiitakes you can't force, and I'll explain what forcing is. That's a method for trying to get them to fruit when you want them to fruit. But they will grow, they will fruit in cold, damp conditions where your other mushrooms won't, your other shiitakes won't. Now I haven't had a lot of success with too many of the varieties. One variety that I have called Snowcap has been really good for me. Your warm weather varieties, they like the 85-degree temperatures, that type of thing. But they're a little bit obstinate, they're stubborn, they're difficult to get to fruit, but boy, I'll tell you, when they do, they're the most gorgeous mushrooms you could ever hope for. I mean, big, beefy shiitake mushrooms. The wide range mushrooms, they kind of take up that middle part, and they kind of go down into the cold weather, they kind of go up into the warm weather, so they fruit the most consistently. For the most part, other than Beltane. I really like Beltane, which falls in that category. But for the most part, they're a smaller mushroom, not as highly ornamented as your warm weather ones, but they're the most productive. They're the ones that you can count on the most often. So if you're doing a kind of a market, that's kind of a nice thing. So but I do a variety of all of them. I also do a variety of oyster mushrooms, and I try a bunch of other things like chestnuts and namicos, all that kind of stuff. Let's see. Okay, so once we have them inoculated, then I bring them back down. So they're up at the house, and I put them in the back of the truck, and I drive them down, and then I bring them down here. So does anybody know how I get them down here? I mean, this is a lot of work. 300 logs to bring
Load 'em
down here.
the creek.
What's that?
Load them down the creek.
Load them down the creek. Just push them down the hill. Yeah,
Like the old days.
yeah. Well, you know, I could throw them on my shoulder and hike them down one at a time. 300 of them. But that sounds like a lot of work to me. I'm not going to do
Sled.
that. Sled?
A sled.
Well, but there's no snow at that point.
Oh,
No snow at that point.
what
Huh?
month are we in now?
What's that? We're in middle of May now.
Middle of May now.
Yep.
Oh,
Mhm.
okay.
300 Boy Scouts.
300 Boy Scouts. Yeah. Yeah. Someone from the last group said K.
Yeah,
My wife.
Kay. Your son.
He doesn't live here. He lives in Milwaukee. Yeah. Anybody a Boy Scout in here? No Boy
Not
Scouts?
anymore.
Okay. You think of Cope class. One of the things you do in Cope is a zip line. I
Yeah.
set up a zip line. Yeah. So I run them down here on a zip line. And that cuts the workload tremendously. So I get them down here quickly, and I put them off in the woods to incubate. And again, I cover them with the black road fabric, and they sit there for a year.
So where are they coming from, Gary? Up where the tent is, you mean?
No, well, I get them out of the woods,
Yeah.
and then I take them up to the house because I need a current bush to run my
Yeah.
drill, and then from there I put them in the truck, and I bring them down somewhere along the driveway here,
Yeah.
and then I set up my zip line wherever I
Right
want
into
to take
here.
them, and I run them down the zip line.
Right into here.
Well, to wherever I'm taking them at this
Okay.
point. Right now it's way up that way. But,
Okay.
Yeah.
Does each log fly by itself, or do you put them in like a sling? And
Yeah, I put them in a sling, and then I've got 2 pulleys on the zip line, and the sling is just basically a rope with a loop tied in it, and I wrap it around the end of the log, tie a square knot, and hang it on the pulley with that loop, and let her go. And then I've got a longer small rope attached to the pulley, so when I empty it, I'm the only one. It'd be nice to have a second person at the bottom to unload. I have to come down and unload it. Then I just pull the pulleys back up.
How long
And
is
reload.
the zip line, Gary?
I can make it as long as I want, as long as I've got enough slope.
So typically it's
Typically
50 yards?
it's about
70 yards?
well, yeah, probably not. I haven't gone that far. Probably about 100 feet.
100 feet. Okay.
Yeah. But I've been thinking about getting a longer cable because I'm going further and further into the woods,
Yeah.
so I don't have to carry it. Yeah. So yeah, that takes a little bit of the work out of it. Okay, so
Gary,
let's.
when you get you finally put them in their spot where they're producing, and do you
Well,
have a problem with wildlife?
Yes, I do. I have a lot of pest problems. Yeah, and I was going to cover that after the fruiting, but we can cover it now. Slugs are a big one. Okay, they like mushrooms. This year they haven't been bad because it's been super dry. But slugs are always an issue. Squirrels and chipmunks are an issue, especially those that have decided to become fungitarians.
Yeah. Yeah.
And deer can be an issue. Now they haven't developed a taste for shiitakes yet, fortunately, but they do have a taste for oyster mushrooms and for the wine caps. And so I have to fence those when they're fruiting, or I'll lose them. Yeah. So Yeah, a lot of
orange fence up there,
the
was
orange-
that what that is?
that's what that is. Yep, that's around wine caps, and they're growing on wood chips. Hmm And last year the year was so clever. I had to basically double the fence, so I had a fence that was 8 feet tall to keep them out. Yeah, yeah. So they can be a real issue, yeah. But yeah, then I don't know, how much time do I have left? Matt?
Coming up on it.
Yeah.
You're doing good.
Doing good? Okay. Yeah, I wanted to talk about fruiting. For the most part, mushrooms have a mind of their own. They fruit when they want to, and that's usually not to your schedule. But with shiitakes, you can play with that a little bit, and you can kind of force them to fruit by making them think that a weather system has come through. So I found that the best production of shiitakes you're going to get is when you have a severe storm. You have thunder and lightning. The thunder just shakes the ground. It's so close. It just booms and shakes. You've got hail that beats the piss out of these things. You've got pounding rain. You've got a 15 to 20 degree temperature drop. When that happens, you're going to get shiitakes. I mean, they're going to come out from all over the place. So what you're trying to do, if you're forcing them, is to emulate a severe thunderstorm. So I have a wooden mallet. I beat my logs. Okay, I admit it. I'm a log beater. So I beat my logs. Then I take them and I throw them in the stream. What I'm trying to get is a good 15 to 20 degrees temperature difference. Yep, and the moisture. Yep. And then they soak there for 12 to 24 hours, and I pull them out, and then I put them in the fruiting racks, like what you see here. Now I was supposed to fruit some on Thursday, and then take them out yesterday morning. Well, Thursday, it only got to 65 degrees here, and the water temperature was 61. Well, I only got 4 degrees difference. I'd be wasting my time. So I didn't do it on Thursday. I did it yesterday, which meant I had to get up. I got up at 4:30 this morning, out here at 5, pulling the logs out of the water. So yeah, you kind of have to play with the weather a little bit to try to get that differential. It's not going to be as good as a really good severe thunderstorm, but you can produce pretty steady, and the more logs you get, then the more you have for market. So I think
So
that's
you only stand them up when they're fruiting?
when they're fruiting. Yep. The
Otherwise-
rest of the time they're laying down, they're resting, and you basically need to rest them. You only want to fruit them like once every 7-8 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the time, if you walk through, you're going to see all these logs that are laying around doing absolutely nothing. They're lazy. And what they're doing is they're resting between times that they're being fruited.
So how do you know when it's time to stand them up?
Well, I do a rotation, and so at the beginning of the season, I go to each one of my racks and say, okay, how many logs do I have? How many can I do each week in order to give them a 7-week rest in between? And so then I will soak them accordingly throughout the season, and then when they come back, they go to the back of the rack. And then every couple of weeks I have to roll the racks forward because I'll run out of rack behind, And so I keep everything in sequence. Mm-hmm.
How long does it take, when you take them out of the creek and stand them up, then how soon do they have mushrooms?
Yeah, generally about 10 days. Takes about 10 days. If the temperature's real warm, they'll come a little quicker, maybe a day and a half quicker. If it's cooler, they'll come a little slower, maybe a day and a half slower.
They don't grow just laying on the ground?
They will, but when they're laying on the ground, they're closer to slugs, and a little bit harder to keep track of them, a little bit harder to pick them, because when they're laying on the ground, you'll have them coming out this side too. So they won't look as nice because they'll be pushed up against the log. So now they're discolored. They don't have the ornamentation. So if you want, nice looking shiitakes with nice ornamentation, like, when people come by your stand, you want them to say, "Wow, those are beautiful mushrooms." And so, yeah, and they stand them up, then they grow basically uninhibited, and they're much easier to pick. What you have to do, this is like milking cows, really, kind of like milking cows. You've got to pick the mushrooms when they're ready to be picked. If you wait too long, you've lost them. Okay, and they're perfect for a very short window of time, like about 12 hours. That's about all you have. So I'm out here in the morning, I'm out here in the evening picking mushrooms every day.
Wow.
Are there some right now that you're ready to pick? or not?
I picked this morning.
Oh, you did?
Yep, and then I'll pick this evening too. Yep.
Oh, wow.
hmm So I probably picked 3 pounds of mushrooms this morning. Yep. And those are going for the Hayward market on Monday. And I try, by doing the 3 markets a week, we sell fresh mushrooms. That's what we sell. And that's why we do 3 markets, or we're set up with 3 markets, so that no matter when these mushrooms fruit, we can always have an outlet for the mushrooms. When I first started, I didn't have a very large quantity, so I only did 1 market a week. And so then I would come home from that market, and my wine caps would have fruited during the day. So now I've got 15 pounds of wine caps, and it's Monday night. The market isn't till next Monday. No place to go with them. And they're not going to be good next Monday. So, yeah.
How do you store them?
I have a refrigerator in my shroom shack, and so I accumulate them in that refrigerator. And you want to keep it cold, not freezing, but cold, in a paper bag. And so then I accumulate them in the refrigerator, and then pull them out when we go to market.
So they will keep a week or so.
Well, they will keep a week or so, but I don't sell them that old.
Do you
3 days,
dehydrate
3 days
them?
max for me is what if they're older than 3 days, I don't take them. Because that's one of our selling points. We sell fresh mushrooms. Yep. And we've developed quite a market. When I first started, I told you that story. We went up to Hayward then, and it was still pretty slow to start with. But we slowly developed the following. We now have a Facebook page, which is an interesting story because when I first tried to get on Facebook with this, I got banned from Facebook because they thought I was doing something illegal. But we finally got on Facebook, and we do a lot of marketing. We do a weekly newsletter, and then we send out updates throughout the week. What we have, how much we have, where we're going to be, all that kind of thing. So a couple of weeks ago, we had a massive fruiting because we had a severe storm on July 27th. And so I put it out there on Facebook, if you want to get mushrooms, this is the time, this is the day to do it. 'Cause we're going to have a lot of mushrooms at this market, and boy, did people show out. I'll tell you what, we had 28 pounds of mushrooms, which is well over a refrigerator full of mushrooms, and they were gone in an hour and a half. So yeah, unbelievable. So,
Gary, who else grows mushrooms? I know there's a guy in Cumberland.
yeah,
Famous.
there's a guy over by Exelon that grows mushrooms, Our Father's Farm. He grows them indoors. We decided to go outdoors for a couple reasons. One is that actually the mushrooms taste better when they're grown outdoors.
Yeah.
You talk to any chef, and he'll tell you that. And they would much prefer buying mushrooms from an outdoor grower if they could, but they usually can't because they are on a schedule, and you can't match their schedule, than they would to buy indoor grown mushrooms, because the indoor grown ones just don't have any taste. So that's one. The other is I got into this business when I was in my 60s, and to do it right, you need to have a sterile room to be able to keep competing fungi out, and to do that, you're looking at 6 figures to put something like that together. You know, most people that try to do it on the cheap, they're only growing mushrooms for 5 or 6 years, and then they're done, because you get these competing mushrooms that establish themselves in that facility, and they can't get them out.
Huh.
And you know, then they basically can't produce anymore. And then you've got those that grow them in their house, so they'll do a grow room in their basement, and that just scares the bejesus out of me, because you know, what are houses made out of? Wood. What do mushrooms eat? Wood. And you're providing perfect temperature, perfect humidity to grow mushrooms. And so you're just asking for trouble, unless there's some way that you can completely separate the area that you're growing mushrooms from your house. And that sounds pretty expensive to me too. And most of the indoor growers, they claim that they're doing that, but I don't think they are.
Yeah.
Because you know, the spores from a mushroom are very small, very light. If there's any gap at all, they're going to find it. You know, once they would get established in the 2x4s in your wall, you'd be sunk.